You are now tuned in to Mind, Body, and Soul with Annette, where your hosts, Annette Harris, analyze intriguing life questions and concerns, such as, do Christians suffer from mental illness? Have you wondered why they act and ask what is really going on in their minds? Do you need Annette? Well, keep listening for a biblical understanding of the psychology of the mind.
Hey there, great afternoon, and welcome to another wonderful session of Mind, Body, and Soul with Annette. And I'm your host, Annette Harris. I want to thank you so much for joining us on today. Thank you for listening to us. I am excited on today, but before I go into what we're going to do on today, I must acknowledge the Lord in prayer. Lord, I thank you for this wonderful day that you have blessed us to see. We thank you for the bright sunshine. We thank you that we are alive to see it. We ask that you would get the glory out of today's session in everything we go to say and do. In Jesus' name we pray. And our opening scripture is the first part of Hosea 4 and 6, and it states, "My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Because thou hast rejected knowledge, I will also reject thee." And again, we are grateful to be here. It is another Wednesday. Many of you call it hump day. Middle of the week, we are here, 12 o'clock noon Central Standard Time. You will normally find us here on IntellectualRadio.com. And I am joined in the studio this afternoon by a beautiful guest. It seems inside and out. I have just officially met her on today, but I have talked with her a little bit and have been kind of following her and what she has been doing. Before I formally introduce you all to her, let me tell you there are three ways that you can listen to us on today. You can go to the station's website, IntellectualRadio.com. Again, that will be one word, IntellectualRadio.com. You can hear us there and you can watch us there. Also, I do have a Facebook Live feed going on my personal page, Annette, known as Annette. So when you come into the live feed, I only ask that you would go ahead, like and share. And I've seen some of you already starting to do that, and I do appreciate that. Like and share so that others can get word of today and join in with us. We are going to open up the phone lines today as well if you would like to call in and join in on today's conversation. Now, with all that being said, to my immediate right, the only other person in the room with me on today is Michelle Newell. How are you on this afternoon?
I am well. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. You sound good. I normally have to tell people to let the mic be their friend, but I can hear you very well.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. I'm so glad that we've made this connection here on today, and you are here in the studio. There's some great things that you have going on, and I will say this before I even get into reading your bio. I was looking at Melanie, which is your sister,
My
looking
sister.
at her page, and I saw something there, and she was actually posting about a book that you had written.
Mhm.
And, I think you had some upcoming events surrounding it.
Yes.
And I said, oh my goodness, let me reach out to Melanie. And I did. So I said, I need to have her on my show. I'm like, because we haven't talked in a long time. She
Mhm.
and I hadn't. And I'm like, do you think that she'll be interested, in coming on the show? And she's like, yeah, I think so. Why don't you, reach out to her? So I said, okay. Now I'm gonna tell you, this woman of God right here is a busy woman. She is so busy, but busy in a good sense.
It's a good thing.
And I had to, how long, what was it, maybe a few weeks before we got it together?
Yes. Yes.
A few weeks, and I reached out, and she's so busy now. Why don't you tell my viewers a little bit about yourself? I'm going to pull up your bio so that we can read it, but tell my viewers just a little bit about yourself on today, if you wouldn't
Sure,
mind.
sure. Well, I am Michelle Red Newell, and just excited about the work that I do with children. I call them our youngest citizens. But I have had an early child care center since 2005. And we actually opened our flagship school in 2005 in the Inglewood community.
Awesome.
And we started again in August of 2005, where we were servicing at that time just 7 children at that particular site. And now we service more than 180 families at that particular site. We have another location that's in the Batavia area in the western suburbs, where we service another 119 families out there.
Wow.
Um, And so just what we're doing with children from the ages of 6 weeks to kindergarten is exciting. And actually was the midwife for the books came out of the life of my niece, who was one of our students at Building Blocks Learning Academy. And again, having the opportunity to invest in those youngest citizens and really create, I call them global citizens, because they learn Mandarin, have yoga for our students, music for our students. Typically, our inner city children would not be exposed to many of the enrichment programs in addition to just a very solid curriculum that we teach them. So we're excited about what we invest in those children, and not just them, but their families. Many of those families situations that they consider to be very hopeless, and us being able to create ecosystems, not just for children, but families, to understand that we're here to make a difference, that we're here to lay firm foundations. And for them, that makes a big difference. I've had people, some of my parents say, I've never seen a Black woman own anything.
Wow.
And so my prayer was that we would go in and educate children, and it's been anything but that. It's been so much more. And so really it was a leap in faith out of corporate America, where I used to work for L'Oreal Cosmetics prior to South Sheen, that had been acquired by L'Oreal, and worked in marketing for years, and had an opportunity to really leap in faith and to connect passion with purpose. And so just excited about the investment that we make in our children.
Oh, I love this. I love this. Oh my goodness. Yeah, you took a big leap of faith there. But obviously God's hand was on it. And so you're moving in the in the right vein, should I say.
Yes.
Now, I don't know if your bio is going to tell me this, but you said you came out of corporate America.
Yes.
What was your real motivation for even starting the Learning Academy?
I did come out of corporate America. Prior to working in corporate America, I used to teach for the Board of Ed. And at that time, many of my colleagues, I just really considered them to be corporate welfare recipients. They were just there collecting a paycheck, and they were not investing in children. And so I remember back then, when teaching for the Board of Ed, really saying, if I ever had an opportunity to, on a larger scale, to invest in children, I wanted to be able to do that. And I think seeing it in Chicago public schools, where you can have an amazing administrator, but you can have a team of people that don't see the vision, and vice versa. You can have a team of teachers and staff who have awesome vision, but not an administrator. And so if the two don't work together, unfortunately, the ones who suffer are our children. And so it was back then that I said I really wanted to do something as it related to investing in children. And so that's how the childcare centers became the focal point for me, to really be able to make a difference directly, not depending on other people, but really pouring into children from a very impactful way.
Now that's beautiful. Now, sometimes people start things maybe because they couldn't find childcare for their own children or something. So maybe they start a business out of that. But this it's beautiful how you saw the need, basically.
Yes,
you saw the need, and the need to be able to help our children. I applaud you for that. I really do. That's a blessing. That's a blessing. And since 2005, right?
2005.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Let's see. I'm looking here. Let me read a little bit to you. I see some of you guys on here. Michelle Thomas, Josh Matoya, Tridana, some of the people I see on here so far. And there may be others. I just don't see your name, so forgive me. Do a little romper room calling out in a few. Let's see. Let's read a little bit. Michelle Red is founder of Building Blocks Learning Academy in Chicago, Illinois. Some of you may be familiar with it. With an extensive career in education, marketing, and development, Michelle is devoted to being an ambassador for youth and is dedicated to linking passion with purpose by creating programs which develop the whole child, regardless of race, creed, color, religion, persuasion, economic, or social and physical disabilities. Building Blocks Learning Academy was created in 2005 around extensive research, developmentally appropriate instruction, and a carefully planned curriculum which introduces and reinforces math, science, language, and social skill building to help children succeed on their educational journey. Now, I must stop and tell you this. I was stuck back when you said Mandarin. Yeah. When they're taught Mandarin, really? Yes. Are you serious?
Yes.
Only thing I'm remembering, we were taught Spanish, the other,
Mm-hmm.
language in addition to English.
Mm-hmm.
Mandarin. Wow. Okay. Let me get off of that. Okay. Building Blocks is a high quality and comprehensive preschool for children ages 6 weeks to 5 years of age, providing curriculum for infant, toddler, preschool, pre-K, and kindergartners. Okay. It says you enhance your professional experience of numerous organizations, including Drexel National Bank, Harris Bank, Junior Achievement, the Chicago Park District, and worked as a marketing manager and director for many top companies, including General Binding Corporation. She's trying to tell you she's not a novice. She's been around the block. L'Oreal Cosmetics, as she said, and Soft Sheen Hair Care, where she handled international brands, portfolios in excess of $309 million, development of strategic plans to establish brand positioning, and managed development of integrated advertising campaigns for their premier brands. Wow, extensive.
Thank
Extensive.
you.
It says as well, Michelle headed new product development and worked along the intellectual properties team for new branding. Building Blocks Learning Academy originated in the heart of Chicago's Englewood community, where serving at risk children and families was paramount. It is the principal goal of Michelle to produce highly esteemed students who grow into lifelong learners through a caring, nurturing, and safe environment. And I don't know, I just love the love that exudes from you, and wanting to help the children. And then, going in Inglewood, that's not
Mhm.
an easy area,
Exactly.
but again, my hat is off to you. And
Thank
I
you.
appreciate you going over there, because they need help too.
They do. They do.
We need help all over, but sometimes some people or some areas are left out.
Mhm.
They're not
Mhm.
even looked at.
Mhm.
They just say, "Oh, Inglewood. Oh no, you don't want to go over
Mhm.
there," and
Mhm.
you try to steer away from it, or you
Mhm.
tell people to steer away from it. But they need help too. They're
Those are
humans
the
too.
areas that need it the most, and many areas that are marginalized. Those are the ones where we really need to concentrate and focus really the most. And that's some of the experiences that we had going in. Is that and even it's funny. I was talking to someone the other day because we're looking to possibly buy land and erect a brand new center for that particular location. And I had a lender who said even before an application was turned in, before they looked at credit or anything, she said, "Well, I'm just letting you know there may be some pushback because it's Inglewood." And I found that to be very disheartening, because you've made a judgment even before I've submitted an application to build a new school or anything, that you've just, because of the area, you've already, what is it, red line or green line or whatever it is
Right.
that they do. But those are the areas where it is needed the most. At one time, Inglewood, which is a very different area. At one point, Inglewood had 6 different aldermen, very unique to the city of Chicago, um, but known years ago for the economic hub that it used to be.
Yes.
And now, anything but that. I believe that area can really um, be that again if we would take the time to breathe some new life back into that community. But also was an area at one time where you had, I believe it was 32 schools, 28 which were on academic probation. So, what type of choices did our children who graduate reading on 3rd and 4th grade reading levels, what type of choices did those parents have to put those students into schools that would continue to challenge them, that would continue to build them? Because we know if you don't challenge children, one or two things will happen. Either they'll lose the interest that they have and or become behavior challenges because there's no one there to continue to pour into them, to continue to challenge them to learn. So I think it is an area, again, as other areas that were identified years ago by the Illinois Facilities Fund, that need quality education. And so that's what we're there trying to do.
I love it. I love it.
Thank
I mean,
you.
and you could have started with middle school
Mhm.
children. You could have started, maybe a charter school or something like that. You
Mhm.
started with the babies,
Mhm.
and they're so impressionable at that
They
age.
are. They
And
are.
for you to get into them, all this that
Mhm.
you're teaching them. Again, I'm stuck back on Mandarin.
Yeah. But you'll be surprised, and maybe not. Statistics show that if a child is not developmentally where they need to be by 3rd grade, literally they're building prisons based off of statistics of a third grader. And if they're not on level, they've already checked them off as a failure. And so that's how this whole building out prisons at looking at statistics of third graders. So it's incumbent upon us to lay foundations at a very young age and then build upon those foundations. And that's why the partnerships between parent and provider is so critical. If you think about it, we have children, our hours typically are 6:30 to 6 p.m. By the time a parent picks up a child at 6, you've got 2 good hours maybe to prepare dinner, to have a little bit of quality time, and then that child should be in bed by 9 or later than 10. So you've had them for 4 hours. We've had them for 11 to 12 hours. So what we pour into them is really, really, really critical. And that's why that partnership is so important. But that is the age where you're building and laying foundations. So that's why that third grade it's vitally important, because if you haven't laid the foundation, then surely by the age of whatever that third grade age is, they're not developmentally ready. They're not, and they're not functioning on the levels that they can if you've invested at them on that level of preschool.
Yeah.
So that's why it's so critically important what we do.
I totally agree. I totally agree. Okay. Let me hop over here to Facebook Live. I did say I was going to open up the phone lines if you guys wanted to call in, but I do see you chiming in here. Our number here is 708-223-8953. Again, 708-223-8953. You all can call in and joining on the topic. If you want to talk to my guest here, I do see some educators that have popped on here, so you all can probably relate to many of the things that she's saying. I see you, Tridana McAllister. I see you, Erica, Janetta, Heather Cook, Demetria Brand, Triplet, Beatrice, Carter, and let's see, I think I called Josh already. There was a comment here that I wanted to make sure I read. There was something from Michelle Thomas. She says, why are the children taught Mandarin instead of a more spoken language like Spanish? Now, she did, I don't know if you just came in or not. She did mention Spanish. But let me read the rest of this. It says, I'm sure it's an amazing language to learn, but where will they speak it? Is that a growing community in the U.S. where they will benefit from that education?
It is. When we looked at what we would provide by way of enrichment, we looked at the way that the world was moving. And when you look at technology, it is so important that that language of Mandarin from Chinese and that they were exposed to that, but also looking at how quickly the Hispanic population is growing. And so we didn't do either or, we did both and.
Yes.
And that further broadens their horizons as it relates to culture. But it really is creating, again, global citizens at this age. And so we are laying the foundation, again, for our partners, which are the parents, to continue to build on the foundation. But if you look at the way that the world is moving in terms of technology, we would be missing the mark if we didn't have an opportunity to teach Mandarin to our children as well as Spanish. And so that's the reason that we chose to do the Mandarin and the Spanish. We also chose to do yoga because what we found is that in our communities, many of our children are skewing to autism, and very bright and vibrant colors are sometimes triggers for those disabilities. And so even the landscape of our classrooms are very mild tones, earth tones that are calming. Because when I have a 4-year-old come and they say, I saw my dad stab my daddy, or my daddy beat up my mom, we want to be able to create an environment for those children to be able to function as a preschooler should in an environment that's not triggering but calming. And so we do have gross motor skill development. You know, we work with a company at one point that was called First Base Fitness to teach gym and things of that nature. But we also wanted to add to their environment something that's very calm, because if this is what you're dealing with at home, we want to be able to create an environment when you come to us for those 11 or 12 hours that you are not reminded of some of the traumatic experiences that you're dealing with on a daily basis, you know, in other environments. So we were very selective in terms of what we did by way of enrichment so that we really could expand for our children, but again, create those global citizens.
I like that, and I kind of figure that's probably the reason why you all went that route, because we do have to look at what's happening in the world around us. Bottom line. But that was a great question, Michelle. That's good to know. There could have been others wondering the same thing, but yeah, that's great. Great question. Let's see here. I'm trying to see if there's anything else on here that I needed to mention before we go further. Now, I know that I brought you on so that we could try to talk about your book. And I know we kind of got stuck, but it's good because I wanted you all to know her background and understand why, I didn't just pull her out of the alley and she just wrote a book, but I wanted you to understand and know what her background was and how she came, to even pen this book. Now, because I did focus on, if I can see that,
sure,
I probably have to lift it carefully. I did also mention on a few of my posts that you're a business owner. So that's what we're talking about if you're just not coming in. We're talking about her business. Now, I'm holding up for each of you to see. And this is so nice. Oh, my gosh.
Thank you.
This is the book, Where's Taylor? Where's Taylor? It said it was illustrated by
I had Pace out of Atlanta.
Pace. Okay. I didn't want to mispronounce the name.
That's okay.
And this is so nice. And it's something that is definitely kid friendly, if I could say. Something they will be attracted to. The book comes out when?
On the 31st of December, we'll have all of the books. We did a pre-launch on the 28th, which was kind of our soft launch, but it was amazing because it was centered around panel discussions on loss, grief, death, and sadness for children, which is a topic that we shy away from, that people don't discuss. So that was the soft launch to introduce the book series, but the books will be in hand on December 31st.
Okay, so December 31st. And then why don't you tell my listeners where they should be able to find your book when it comes out. I don't know if there's any pre-orders or anything like that, but
yes.
let them know where they can find the book.
Surely, we are doing pre-orders, and that's what we did on that 28th when we did the soft launch. But if you go to where'staylor.com, it gives you kind of a brief backdrop of the book and Taylor, but also you can do pre-orders on that website. When we launch, the books will be available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and you'll still be able to go to that website and purchase them as well.
Okay, great. I was telling her before we started, I said, my only disadvantage today, if I can say it like that, is that I didn't get a chance to read the book. Now, of course, the book is not out yet, so I can understand that. But I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it coming out. So while she's here today, I'm going to allow her to talk about the book as much as she wants, but I want you all to make sure you support her, because again, it's a sensitive topic, yet it's something that has to be dealt with. So we're going to take a quick break right here, and then we're going to come back and start talking about the book, Where's Taylor? I'm here in the studio here now with Michelle Newell, author and business owner, and you are tuned into Mind, Body, and Soul with Annette. We will be back in a moment.
No, I don't believe that I got to stay hurt. I got to Lord, I believe in you. Lord, I believe in you. Lord, I believe in you. Lord, I believe. I don't believe it, that I got to stay sick when God can heal. I don't believe it. No. When God can heal. I don't believe it, no. That I got to stay hurt. I got to Lord, I believe in you. Lord, I believe. Oh, Lord, I believe in you. Lord, I believe. I'm a believer. I've been washed in the blood of the Lamb. You forgive me of my believe in you. Lord, I believe. Lord, I believe in you. Lord, I believe. I don't believe it, no. That I got to stay sick when God can heal. I don't believe that I gotta stay broke when God can bless. I don't believe that I gotta stay hurt. I got to real. Lord, I believe in you. Lord, I believe in you. Lord, Lord, I'm a believer. Lord, I've been washed in the blood of the Lamb. You did it all for me. You forgave me of my sins. You looked at my point and found I need, oh God, I know. I'm a believer, yeah. You forgive me of my sins, oh God, I must in. And I'll never let you go, no, no. Lord, I believe in you. Oh, Lord, I believe in your healing, Lord. In your power, Lord, I believe. Oh, Lord, you've been my shelter. You've been my healer. Lord, I believe in you. I believe. Lord, I believe in you. Lord, I believe in you. Oh, yes, you are my God. Lord, I believe in you. Hey, the Bible says, if I seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, so Lord, I believe. Oh Lord, yeah. You said if I call on your name, oh Lord, the Bible says you've been so good to me. You will heal bodies. You said it, Lord. You never leave me or forsake me. Oh Lord, I believe.
All right, welcome back. Welcome back to Mind, Body, and Soul with Annette. I am your host, Annette Harris. Thank you so much for joining us on this afternoon. It's a wonderful Wednesday in the neighborhood. We're here at Intellectual Radio, and we're excited about today's topic. And if you're just now joining us, you haven't missed that much. You've missed about a half hour, but you're just in time. So we're glad that you're here today. I have a Facebook live feed on it, Annette known as Annette, my personal page. We're also on YouTube. The station's website, IntellectualRadio.com. So there are a few different ways you can listen and or watch us on today. I see you, Joe McCord, Buddy Gill, Marlene Allen. Thanks for watching and joining us on today. Apostle Dion Hunt, that is my co-host for the other show, Mind, Body, and Soul A&D Conversation. Thank you for watching on today. So we are here in the studio with Michelle Newell. We did introduce her. We did talk about her business that has been open since 2005, Building Blocks Academy. Am I correct?
Mm-hmm. Building Blocks Learning Academy.
Learning Academy.
Yes.
Okay. And she has a couple of different locations.
Mm-hmm.
So we have been discussing about that, but we wanted to talk about her book, Where's Taylor? And I showed it to you. I can do it again.
Sure.
Because some of you have probably just now joined us, and here is the visual of the book. The book comes out December 31st, and I wanted to start talking about this book. So why don't you kind of take us through the reason that you began penning this book, where, the reason, where it originated from. Let my listeners know on today.
Sure. So the Where's Taylor book series came out of, as I mentioned, my niece, Taylor, who was a very gregarious, outgoing 4-year-old. My sister, Melanie, was her daughter. And I would often joke with Melanie by saying, thank you so much for going through labor pains and stretch marks for me, because Taylor really was, I'd taken her as my own. Mel was in school finishing up her journalism degree and working for the radio stations as well.
Right.
And so Taylor spent so much time with myself and my mother, but was one of my students at Building Blocks Learning Academy. And so, unfortunately, Taylor fell ill to a very rare autoimmune disease that was called MAS, macrophage activation syndrome. It's an autoimmune system disease that attacks the system. She and I were walking in the mall one day, believe it or not, and she told me she couldn't walk. And I thought she was joking because I thought she wanted me to pick her up. And so she says, "No, really, Auntie, I can't walk." And so when I went to pick her up and saw that at every joint area, about the size of a little plum, her joints were all enlarged. And so MAS, because it is an autoimmune disease and it attacks the joints, it's sometimes misdiagnosed as juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. And that is what it was misdiagnosed as in the beginning. And then finally we found what she really was diagnosed with, and that was the MAS. And so unfortunately, the only thing that would save her was a bone marrow transplant. So we connected with betamatch.com and LifeSource. At that time, we did a donor drive, and we found a match. We found a donor who really was the impetus for the actual bone marrow transplant that took place. But prior to going, we had to find a doctor who would do the actual bone marrow transplant. And there were only two here in the U.S., one in Minnesota and the other in Cincinnati. So we met with the doctors, we interviewed them, and all roads led to Cincinnati Children's Hospital. And so while Taylor was in the hospital there, all of her friends would continue to send her letters while she was in the hospital. They would draw pictures. Her teacher would send her homework while she was in the hospital. And in between staying at the Cincinnati Children's Hospital, she also stayed at Ronald McDonald House, which was literally in the back of the hospital. And so, unfortunately, she lost her battle. And she passed away. And when we returned from the Cincinnati Children's Hospital, many of her friends who had been sending her letters wanted to know, "Where's Taylor?" And that's what they asked. "Miss Red, where's Taylor?" And so at that time, I thought about, how do you talk to children about loss, about death, about grief and sadness? And without thinking, I said, "She's in heaven." And as a preschooler would do from their conceptual understanding, well, if we were sending her letters to the hospital, the next question they ask is, "Well, can we send her letters to heaven?"
Oh, wow.
And I said yes. And they began to illustrate, they began to write. And I kept the letters as a keepsake and thought about some years ago when there was just a tremendous amount of gun violence and many children were being killed, just innocent to the situations and the circumstances of what was taking place. How could I memorialize her life while blessing others? And so initially the project was that we would take the letters that they wrote and we were going to write a book, and it was entitled Letters to Heaven.
Oh.
And so on January the 19th of 2019, we actually are going to launch the book entitled Letters to Heaven, and it will actually house the original letters that her friends wrote her while asking if they could send letters to heaven.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And so what came out of that was like, okay, we can do this. But the same struggles that I had talking to those children about grief and sadness, I know that children suffer every single day with sadness and grief. And how could we help them to navigate that space? And that is how the Where's Taylor series, I guess, if you will, came alive, is that we began to put together with the authentication from child psychologists and others who contributed to the three books that are in the series. And the first one is Where's Taylor, which is a preschool book. And it addresses the ages of 4 to 8 on the level developmentally that they understand. And I was talking to a friend of mine sharing the project, and she said, she's a teacher out in Flossmoor, and she said, "This is amazing." She began to tear up, and she says, "I know that my superintendent would love this project, but it has to be scalable, and it needs to hit the developmental points of other children who are suffering also, other than just preschoolers." And that's what made us go and extend out to middle school, high
Beautiful.
school, and higher. And so the second book in the series is called Taylor, Taylor, Where Did You Go? And that is a how-to guide for parents, caregivers, guardians, teachers to talk to children about loss and grief and death, all again authenticated by child psychologists with coping skills to help that age group deal with loss and grief and death. And then the third book in the series is called Beyond Taylor. And that one is for the older children from high school on up. And it also addresses coping skills, but it also has to it a journal for them to be able to write and to reflect on the loved ones that they have lost or how they're dealing with sadness and grief. I do want to be clear because I think sometimes when people hear about the project, they automatically tie it to death. But children suffer every day from
Yes.
loss and grief and sadness that's not associated with death, but it could be a divorce. It could be the move from one home to another. We worked very closely with DCFS in this project. And when we did the panel discussion, that was the launch of the books, we had an amazing panelist in Denise Murray, who was the former deputy director for DCFS. And she talked very passionately about the trauma that children suffer when they're even moved from their biological families to foster care. And so it could be when you think about immigration, what this country was going through with,
Yes.
the immigration piece, children being pulled from their families. That's loss. That's grief. And so it is a topic that I think we recognize children as being very resilient, but we never stop to think about the fact that they're little humans, little citizens with feelings. And sometimes it may not be as visible as you and I. We may cry, we may tear up, we may become angry or frustrated with the loss of someone or something. And children may not show their suffering the same way. And sometimes they do, but we're not paying attention.
Ah, yes.
Sometimes it's that we're not resolved with our own feelings. And so if we're not resolved in how do I discuss this? How do I talk to a child about something that I struggle with every single day? And so when I tell you Taylor's Little Life, the exciting piece for me that it will be a blessing to so many others who deal, and it's been therapeutic for me to
I was thinking that. Yes, I'm sure.
To pen this has been very therapeutic, and even listening to some of the things that the child psychologist talked about, things to do versus things not to do. How do you keep the loving memories of those people alive? And how do you deal with grief, loss, and sadness? So it's a topic, again, that we don't talk about, but it's one that, it's funny, the Chicago Parent Magazine did an article on the book, and the interviewer, she said, this is amazing because this is something we just don't talk about.
We don't.
And so I'm happy that it is now shedding some light on, as you mentioned, a very sensitive subject, but one that's very needed. Because if we don't address, I was on Windy City Live, and it's funny because we were in the green room, and the young lady who was doing the makeup, she said, I had an opportunity to peek at your project. She says, you have no idea how many lives you're getting ready to change. She says, I was in a relationship, and she had just gone through a divorce. And she said that her ex-husband, shared stories of when he was a child, how he experienced loss and grief, had an unresolved relationship with his father, who had made many promises that he never kept. And he said he would stand at the window and wait many times for his dad to show up, to take him to a baseball game or to take him out. And those were feelings of sadness and grief that he never reconciled. And now they show up in his adult life, and he's a very difficult time navigating relationships as a result of things that were not resolved as a kid.
Right. So. And people don't understand where that stuff originates from.
Yes.
It's a reason for it.
It is.
Now, I have been over here and jumping on the inside because you've just excited me. So you all know my background is in psychology, and I'm always wondering, and I'm thinking about, my whole thing, I just want to help somebody. And that's what I hear, with your reasoning for writing this book. You wanted to help the little people,
Mhm.
And how they were dealing with that immediate, situation, dealing with, the loss of Taylor.
Mhm.
But then I love also how you are able to, and I wrote down the different names of the books in your series about how you're not just addressing death, like you said,
Mm.
loss, grief, sadness, divorce. The children, they internalize so
They do.
much.
They do.
And we don't realize sometimes, and you hit it on the head when you mentioned sometimes we don't know ourselves as adults
Mm.
sometimes how to deal with it.
Mhm.
So we can only imagine the babies,
Yes.
how they're dealing with it. Whether it's a divorce, whether it's a change, moving,
Mhm.
you move somewhere different,
Yes.
or you come out of the system. I
Mhm.
had a young lady on some months back. She said the system was her parents. That's all she
Mm.
ever knew. She was in and out of 14 different homes.
Mhm.
By the time, was she 18? I think that's when they totally put you out.
Yes.
And so she internalized a lot. She had to deal with a lot. Every parent, every home was not the same. She
Yes.
dealt with so much. She dealt with abuse. She dealt with so
Mhm.
much. And of course, consequently, that is going to determine or dictate your life.
It does.
Unless there's somebody there to help navigate you through it, or you get the counseling or the help you need. So I love this. I mean, I
Thank
absolutely
you.
love this. Let me read just a few comments that are on here.
Sure.
D'Amica, another educator, thank you for watching. Joining us on today, Brittany McCord is on. Michelle Thomas says this is such an amazing project.
Thank you.
Let's see. Demetrius Hunt, thank you for watching. Another comment here says this topic is most overlooked but much needed. Thank you for focusing in on the children.
Thank you.
It is. I can't say enough. Oh, Demetria, thank you for putting where the people can find your book at. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's my assistant. Thank you. I appreciate you. But yeah, this is. I mean, I can't say enough how. And I agree with whoever that was that said this project is gonna help many people. I know now of a couple. I was helping to a couple deal with a situation they were going through, and they were pretty much on the verge of breaking up.
Mhm.
And I went over and sat down and was talking with them. And I said, because some of the things that was happening with them, I said, my mind started thinking back. Okay, I was thinking about the things that he went through as a child, and come to find out he had been in in the system
Mhm.
for a while, and I didn't even know that
Mhm.
at one point. But I think there was something that happened when he was in the system
Mm.
that is dictating his actions and stuff now.
Mhm.
You know, and then sometimes if you don't have that figure in front of you in terms of what a husband is supposed to be, or what a father is supposed to
Mhm.
be, how are you
Mhm.
gonna do it? You
Exactly.
can't.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's something again. People internalize things for so long,
They do.
and they don't. If they don't get the help they need, they won't be helped. I
That's
mean,
true.
it may sound simple, but it's very true.
Mhm.
Dr. Hill, I see you watching. Thank you so much. I
Mhm.
appreciate you. But yeah, so okay, so that's the base. That's how it started. Talking about your late niece. Now, let me ask you her age at the time that she started getting
4.
sick.
She was 4 when she got sick and had just turned 4, and that remainder of that year was plagued with the illness, and she passed away when she was 4.
Okay, so
Yeah,
okay, she didn't make
she
it to
passed.
5.
No,
Okay.
no.
Okay, all right.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's something. And you kind of sound like me when you mentioned when you told your sister, thank you for going through the delivery and the pain process. I don't have any children of my own, okay? So both of my sisters do, and I tell them those are my babies.
That's right.
Those are my babies, So I'm the aunt who probably lets them do whatever they want to do or
Exactly.
something like that.
Exactly.
But yeah, so I can kind of
Exactly.
relate in that sense.
Yeah.
Let's see, Elder McGee, thank you so much for watching. I know that he has penned a poem for today's session. He does spoken word, so he
Oh.
normally pinned something for the topic at hand on Mind, Body, and Soul.
Okay.
So we do have one on today that we're going to take a
Awesome.
listen to before the session is over with. Buddy Gill says to hear stories like these should cause one to realize how blessed they are and stop complaining about nothing.
That's right.
And I agree.
I do. I agree as well.
Yeah, because you never know what the other person is going through unless you hear it, unless they tell you. You know, sometimes they're not really, telling you anything too. So okay, so she passed away when she was 4. Now, what year was that?
She passed away in 2010.
2010.
Yep,
Okay.
2010.
All right, so we're 8 years in now.
Yes.
How long after her passing? And I know you said you did it because you were trying to figure out how to, instruct the kids on how to deal with, the fact that she's no longer here. How long after her passing did you even start thinking about writing a book?
Back in 2014, I actually met with a publisher, and at that time, the project really was just the Letters to Heaven.
Okay.
And it took form into the Where's Taylor series when there were 2 things that took place. I had a teacher that passed away, Miss Kathy, a couple of years ago and 2 years ago, and we literally had to bring in crisis counselors for our preschoolers.
Oh, I'm sorry, a teacher within your
daycare center.
Oh,
yes.
Wow.
And so when we brought in the crisis counselors, at that point, I said, I've got to do something, because we always hear about when tragedy takes place. It's always on a high school level. They're bringing in crisis counselors for high schoolers, every now and then, maybe a middle school, but you never hear anyone again address the needs of preschoolers.
Yes.
Or younger children, should I say. And it was that, coupled with, there was in the news a young boy, he was 3. He was in a van sitting while his mom went into work. I think it was at a cleaners on 63rd, between 63rd, 65th and King Drive.
Okay.
And it was something that stood out about the story. There was a drive-by shooting, and the 3-year-old was shot and killed. And I was saying, oh my God, now when he doesn't return to school, what will his friends think about? And it was at that I began to figure out, okay, there's something we can do. And it was Kathy's death that pinned it to say I needed to move forward. And so the beginning of this year, I went to a hotel in Florida and sat for 3 days with a young lady that helped me kind of put some things together, and penned all 3 books in the 3 days that we were locked up in a hotel, and finished all the manuscripts to say, let's do this really so that we can make a difference in the lives of other children, or helping adults who want to help children navigate this space. And so that's how, we completed the project. And so we have, believe it or not, I've gotten telephone calls from people in the Baltimore School District. I've gotten phone calls from funeral homes. I've gotten phone calls from, we're working with the Black McDonald's Owners Operations Associations, people who are calling saying, how do we get the book? We really want to take this to just another level. Children's hospitals. We, on the 28th, when we did the launch of the book, we had the panel discussion, as I mentioned, and we had panelists that were child psychologists. We worked directly with Lurie's Children's Hospital. We worked with the Rainbow. They're a grievance organization that addresses the needs of how do you talk to children and navigate that space through activities, but non-for-profit organizations whose mission was around grief, loss, and sadness. Cleopatra Pendleton, Hydea Pendleton's mom, was one of our panelists, as was, again, Dr. Murray from DCFS, but really addressing this topic. And so very grounded, rooted organizations, people, families that have dealt with this topic. And so it was moderated by Robin Robinson. And so it was just an awesome time having conversation around this particular topic. And so, really wanting to get the information out, but being surprised at how many people, when I got the call from the funeral home director on the West Side, She says, I want to buy the books and give them to my families who have,
wow,
suffered loss. And this book will help them to talk to their children on how to navigate that space. And I wasn't even thinking that way, but I was like, that is true. And so it has been a blessing even before the book has, tangibly gotten in hand, just in terms of the conversation surrounding how many people will be blessed by it.
Definitely. I know they are.
Mm-hmm.
And me just sitting here, just listening and thinking about it. My goodness, it's going to go all over. I know the Lord's hand is on this.
Thank you. Thank you.
Darcy, I see you watching. Thanks for watching. Apostle Hunt says this is amazing. I totally agree. I totally agree. I see wows all over here. So yeah, guys, when this book comes out, I mean, she did say you can do pre-orders as well. Let's give them that information again.
It's where'staylor.com. And that's where they can, that page shows information again about the book, about Taylor, about the illustrator. Ahad Pace out of Atlanta did an amazing job illustrating the pages and helping me to tell the story of Where's Taylor, and again, how developmentally on every level, how children, again, can navigate that space. And it's in a language that they can understand it.
Right. Definitely. Mm-hmm. Okay, good. So you said you took 3 days.
I did.
Locked up in a hotel.
Locked up in a hotel.
But you did 3 manuscripts.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm so impressed.
Thank you.
I mean, obviously, the determination, to get it done, was paramount.
Mm-hmm.
And it's probably what was pushing and motivating you. Mm-hmm. And I just love it. So, sometimes people, they said, okay, I'm going to write a book, and it takes them a while. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not knocking anybody because I haven't written a book, so I'm not saying anything negative about anybody. But sometimes, depending, of course, depending on people's schedule, this, that, and the other. So I think that was great for you to go and just, basically kind of get this out. I remember when I was kind of chit-chatting a little bit with Mel, she said she always told me she wanted to do it. And then she just put it together and bam, here it is. I said, wow, that's really something. So now you're mentioning that you actually interacted with child psychologists, and you had some people to kind of help you out with this. What were some of the things that Michelle learned herself as you were writing this book, as you were getting everything together for it? What did you yourself learn?
Some of the things that twofold for me personally, when I say that it was very therapeutic, I think I needed validation about some things, because when Taylor passed away, I was very angry. And I had a very serious conversation with the Lord about why would you even bring her into my life and then take her in such short, 4 short years. And so there really was anger. And I remember one of the child psychologists, in some of the documentation that's in the books, it talks about it is okay to be angry.
Yes.
And for a long time, I struggled with that, because I shared with a couple of people that I was angry with the Lord. And, many people shied away. It's like, oh, you shouldn't say that. You can't be angry with. And I said, no, as I think about this, He is my Father. And just as I have a relationship with anybody else, there are times that I get upset with people. There are times that they get upset with me, but we don't fall out of love one with another. And so even my Heavenly Father, understanding the hurt and the pain, when she passed, to see my sister, go through what she went through. And then the sad thing to this is 18 months after Taylor passed, my mother passed.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know that.
Yep.
Okay.
And I believe really from a broken heart. And although cancer had plagued her body, my mom had not been sick, but she never left Taylor's side. And so for all of us, my nieces and nephews, Taylor just came into, she was just this burst of fresh air, this energy, again, very gregarious, wanted to be, of course, the big girl when she was around her nieces and nephew. But there was an age difference of almost 13 to 14 years between Taylor and the youngest niece between them. And so everybody was just excited about her little life. And so when she passed away, I was very angry with the Lord, but I understood that he didn't stop loving me and I didn't stop loving him, but I was very organic and transparent in my relationship and my feelings. And so what was confirmed in this project was that was okay, that it was okay to feel that way. The other piece, though, was that there are ways to move from, after really acknowledging the hurt and the anger, ways to acknowledge and to keep the life of that loved one alive. And so even in the illustrations of the book, it comes from a place of where Taylor, was this very outgoing little girl, and she had a friend, and she and the friend did so many wonderful things together. They had a lot of fun. And then Taylor became ill. And one of the things that's important that came out of the child psychologist is to talk about your feelings, talk about your questions. And so in the book, the child is talking to her mom and trying to understand why Taylor is sick and how come the doctors can't make her well. And then when Taylor passes, the child in the book is asking her mom, "Where's Taylor?" And there is a transition, of obviously Taylor passing away, but it's a very upbeat conversation with the child. And then she begins to do things that reminds her of favorable memories of her and Taylor, if it's, baking cookies or pizza. And so for me, even doing things in this book was one of those things to keep Taylor's memory alive, something that, Taylor was an avid, even at 4, she loved to read.
Did she?
She did. And so I have pictures of her in the library at the child care center reading. Melanie started reading to Taylor when she was in the womb. And so Taylor, knew her sight words and could read at 3. And so just thinking about, wow, how do I keep her memory alive, which is one of the coping skills. And that was to pen this book so that it would not just memorialize her in a very positive way, but also that her life then becomes a blessing to others.
Definitely. I love this.
So that was one of the things. The other thing that I learned while doing this, children are very inquisitive. And so the questions that they had about death, how many times do you die, Miss Red? What do you do when you die? One of the girls, and it was actually on WGN, you catch a 4-year-old who says, my grandmother died and I wrote her a friendship card. And so that was her way of remembering her grandmother and keeping her memory alive, all which aligned with what those child psychologists recommended for coping skills.
Definitely. Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, that's good because, like I said, obviously you have you've learned something. You were able to deal with a little bit easier yourself. Mm-hmm. I always tell people, I said, when you're dealing with death and you're dealing with the death of a loved one or someone close to you, you don't. And this is just me. It's Annette saying this. I don't think you get over it. You just get through it.
Exactly.
Because that's a part of you that's gone.
It's a journey.
And so people have to understand how to deal with it. And it is a part of life. We may not want to accept that or believe that, but it is a part of life. Mm-hmm. So, I can't applaud you any more than I already have. I'm going to continue applauding you. I really am. But what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to take a quick break. I'm not sure if our poem is ready, but I want to take a quick break and actually just play a little bit of music, and we'll come back for more. Maybe we can do the spoken word on the next break. Okay? You listen to Mind, Body, and Soul with Annette right here on Intellectual Radio.
I've made up my mind that it's my time to press on towards the mark that God has for me. I've wiped away my tears and thrown away some fears. I'm standing strong and moving on to what God has for me. For the race is not given to the swift. No, it's not given to the strong, not even to the brave, but to the one who can hold on. Whoa, you gotta keep moving. You gotta keep pressing. pressing on towards the mark God is giving you. That God is giving you. Ooh. You gotta keep moving. Gotta keep pressing on towards the mark that God is giving you. That God has given you. For the race is not given. Ooh, no, it's not given. Not even to but to the one who can hold on. Hold on. Keep moving. Pressing on. Keep moving. Pressing on. Keep moving. Keep pressing on. Keep moving. Keep pressing on. Hold on. You gotta just hold on. Hey, don't get weary. Hold on. Don't give up. Hold on. Lean on me, lean on. Hold on to what God has given you. Don't give up. Be strong. Help is on the way. Don't give up today. Hold on. Be strong. Help is on the way. Yes, it is. Be strong. I'm telling you, He's coming. He's a very active help. He's a very trouble. Hold on. Be strong.
All right, welcome back. Welcome back to Mind, Body, and Soul with Annette. I am your host, Annette Harris. Thank you so much for returning, listening to us on today. We're talking today with author and business owner Michelle Red Newell is in the studio on this afternoon, and we're talking about her project, the series, Where's Taylor? Where's Taylor? And if you are just now joining us, you're going to have to be kind and rewind so that you can hear the beginning. But this has been great. I see here on Facebook Live, my screen was frozen, so we're on part 2 here. So you all can. I see you, Michaela. Thanks for watching. On today, make sure you guys share this second feed if you would not mind. I am wanting to get it. Okay, Eld McGee. I want to get back into this. You were talking when I was asking you about some of the things that you had learned from writing this book, and you kind of reminded me when you first stated, you said that you were angry at first. Now, of course, there are 5 stages of grief. You may have gone through the other 4 stages. I don't know, but of course, anger was one of them.
Yes.
And I'm so glad that when you said you were talking with the psychologist or the child psychologist, you understood that it is acceptable. So, so to speak, because we and then sometimes when we go through those different stages, we don't even realize that that's what's happening to us.
Exactly.
We get to bargaining, bargaining with God. Okay, like
Mm-hmm.
really, couldn't you have done something or whatever? Or we go through denial too.
Mm-hmm.
Some people really go through depression. And it may not be like an extensive form of depression, but again, you've lost that loved one.
Exactly.
And again, that's a part of you. And then like you were saying, you were like, okay, we only had her for 4 years. Like really,
Mm-hmm.
And then then some people go through the other stage, which is acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that with you penning this book, that is your way. And then you're also trying to give back so that the other little people could understand.
Yes.
Now, you learned something through this, and I'm quite sure that the rest of your family, even Taylor's mom,
Mm-hmm.
Melanie,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if you're able to share anything that her thoughts on this book, the project, and in the making of it, in the now. I saw a little vid. I wasn't able to make it on the 28th, but I saw a little vid from there, and I think I saw someone had the camera on her.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think she kind of walked out a little bit. I don't know for what reason,
Mm-hmm.
but I was wondering even how she was even dealing with, that launch
Mm-hmm.
too. So I don't know
Mm-hmm.
how much you want to share about Taylor's mom.
The one of the things that I've been very transparent, with Melanie along this journey, and she's extremely excited about it. The fact again that this is a way to keep Taylor's memory alive while blessing others. And she did. She walked out, and I think she got heavy while we were having conversation, about Taylor, and I was making my final remarks. I will tell you, Melanie has been amazing, not just even during Taylor's illness, but afterwards. And then again, 18 months after when we lost my mom, I was like, if it had been me, just the loss of a child, and then to turn around and lose our mother, who had been there every step of the way, I said I'd probably be somewhere in a straitjacket, bumping my head up against a wall. But Melanie has been amazing. I think part of this process, even with the psychologist, it's how people cope, and people cope with things in different ways.
Very different.
I know that Melanie is an avid Facebook person, and so I tell her that she really does the publicity for this. But anybody who wants to know anything, I go to Melanie, because so I think part of her coping mechanism for her of keeping Taylor alive and dealing with things is, through media. She lives in that space, and she does very well in that space. And even in this time, she was always very strong, a pillar of strength. You very seldom saw her, kind of break down, but it was like, how do we get things moving? It's too much to do. And it was at the passing of Taylor. I'll never forget, we were sitting in the Ronald McDonald House, and Taylor had passed. We were cleaning out all of her things, and Melanie and I were taking boxes back and forth to the truck, and my mother was in there sweeping the floor. And Melanie and I walked in on a conversation my mother was having with Taylor as she was sweeping the floor in the Ronald McDonald House. And she was saying, well, baby, big girl, people are going to expect me to go back to normal, but I don't know what normal is anymore. And Taylor had been, the focal point, and had been, again, just this burst of energy for all of us. And so it was at that time in the Ronald McDonald House, Melanie, she just kind of broke down, and she says, I can't do it. I'm going to need you to help plan the funeral, to get things going. She says, I just don't have the strength to do it. And I can only imagine, I was the aunt. So imagine, being the mother, having lost at some point. But Melanie has been most resilient in this process. Everything from finding the illustrator to,
Oh, wow.
I'll share everything, because I've wanted her to be pleased with the project. And so from the very first drawing we got, the illustrator sent it to me. I sent it to her. What do you like? Should we tweak the ponytail? Should we, how does the nose look? And so she's been, very hands-on with whatever has taken place. And some things I didn't want to show. I wanted her to be surprised, but she's done well.
Oh, that
She's
is
done
awesome.
well, and she's excited. She says, I can't believe, she said, you talked about it, but I can't believe you actually did it. And
Right.
so she's excited. She is excited.
Oh, that is beautiful. And I'm sure that makes you feel good.
It does. It
Because
does.
and you said you shared with her, as the project was going along,
Yes.
getting her thoughts, getting her opinions, on the book itself. Of course, this was her child.
Yes.
Making her feel a part of what you're doing. That helps. That's another way for her to be able to cope.
Yes, it is.
Get her therapy that way as well.
Absolutely.
So yeah, this is great. This is great. I see you guys coming back in on the Facebook Live, the second part. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's see. I don't know how to pronounce that name. Gistreams? Did I say that right? Okay, and then Tracy Kincaid, Josh is back on. Thank you for watching. Beatrice Carter. You guys, I appreciate you. You all know. Let me just say that I appreciate you all for jumping in. Any comments or questions? If you do want to call, if you're able to, I know some of you are probably at work. The number here is 708-223-8953. If you wanted to call in to talk with us on today, or you can just go ahead and continue to place your comments in the comment section on the live feed. And thank you for coming back. I see you. I see you guys waving. Thank you. Appreciate it. Go ahead and like and share this video too as well. But yeah, this is something that, as we stated earlier, it's sensitive, but it needs to be dealt with. And now, when you started penning the book, what did you say to the students? Did you tell them that you were writing a book? What were their thoughts on it? And did you even get their input? I know you said the letters with Letters to Heaven, but
yes,
tell me about that.
So we did. We actually took the first draft of the book and I read it too. It was actually aired on WGN. They captured it on camera where we were reading the book to children. And so we had a discussion first before we actually started reading and just talking about, and that's one of the things, again, the child psychologist mentioned, it's always talking about conceptually where children are in their thoughts about loss, grief, death, sadness. And so when we began to talk about death, and I told them that I'd written a book, it was about my niece, and it was about her life and that she'd gotten sick and that she passed away. That's where they just began to inquire, oh gosh, so many questions about death, even to the point where some of Taylor's friends, when she did pass away, their mom was very transparent in having conversations with them. Conceptually, they wanted to understand. They came to the funeral. They talked to their mom. She shared with them that Taylor was buried in the cemetery. She took them to the cemetery, and they wanted to dig Taylor up.
Oh, wow.
Because conceptually, and it still aligns itself with us as adults, if you don't understand what happens to the body,
yes,
from a very biblical perspective, you think they're still in the ground.
Exactly.
And so children wanted to dig her body back up and have conversation with her. Some of the children that we read the book to thought the same things. Or how do you get to heaven? Where's heaven? Is it up in those clouds? Can I still talk to that person, whoever that loved one is? So again, understanding what their thoughts are is where you meet them, and then you begin the conversation from there. It's not me as an adult placing in that child's mind what my thoughts are about loss, grief, and death and sadness, but having a very open and organic conversation with children and allowing them the opportunity to really share their thoughts, and then really having a great, robust conversation about where they are, and then how we, again, transition that to a very positive place and not something that's daunting or that it's very sad or that they stay in that space of anger, but acknowledging where they are, talking about it, and then how do we move to a very positive place.
Okay. So then obviously the children that you were reading to were not the ones that were there when she passed away, because we're talking about an 8-year difference here. So she
Correct.
would have been around 12 or something now. Wow.
But we did even when we did the launch on the 28th, one of Taylor's best friends actually opened up with a poem for
I think I saw something like that.
yeah,
Okay.
Alex Murphy was one of Taylor's best girlfriends, and she did a poem at the opening of the launch. We still have many of the families that were friends of Taylor's that keep in touch with us, and their children still remember Taylor and talk about her on a regular basis. Taylor's teachers who would send homework while she was in the hospital still keep in touch with us about, their memories, fond memories of Taylor, and, just doing a post check on us every now and then to see how we're doing. So we still have relationships, we still have conversations and dialogue. So there are some students that remembered her that we still keep in touch with.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
And as you're talking, I'm thinking, because sometimes I try to put myself into situations so I can kind of understand a little bit. But I'm reminded of when I was in grade school, and I was a little bit older than Taylor. I remember in grade school, she was a good friend of mine.
Mm-hmm.
She passed away when we were in grade school.
Mm-hmm.
And that thing haunted me for years. Because we were the same age, and then you start thinking about it. I don't know if any of the children asked you any questions like, oh, "Will that happen to me?" or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But those were some of my thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really know how to cope with it or deal with it, and so I remembered where she lived.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, I believe she passed away in her home, if I'm not mistaken. So then, knowing where she lived, I would always look at that house and say, "Oh man,
Mm-hmm.
she passed away or whatever." And it was hard for me to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was in grade school. I don't think I had made it to maybe third or fourth grade or
Mm-hmm.
something like that.
Mm-hmm. But if you think this is a conversation that I had on Windy City Live, and that was when I was coming up. When people passed away, it was because they were old or they were sick.
Yes.
You never really heard of young people passing away. And I remember, and it's still, as you mentioned, I don't necessarily say that it haunts me, but it was always something in my mind. One of my friends, and it was my sister, myself, and our neighbor, Karen Millsap, I never forget. We were all the best of friends. And it had to be maybe I was 10, Karen 11, my oldest sister Sheila 12. Well, Karen passed away of a brain aneurysm. And it was just unheard of that someone young died. And I remember having a ton of questions from my mom, even back then. Where's Karen? We were all out on a Sunday evening. We would always go to the drive-in and Karen wasn't present. And so we were like, where is Karen? And I thought about it when doing the books.
Wow.
That even back then, death or loss wasn't something that happened all the time. And now it is something that you can turn the news on and it's not unheard of a 3 or 4 or 5-year-old to, again, the 3-year-old boy in the van, just sitting in the van, the wrong place at the wrong time, or children being ill and passing away. And so it is a topic, again, that I wanted to shed some light on. But I also think about, too, when you said something that haunts you, one of the things in terms of coping skills or things to do versus not do that some of the child psychologists talked about is that when explaining death to children, to stay away from conversations like they're sleeping or they're resting.
Okay.
Because children will then become afraid and it becomes daunting to them to say, well, if I go to sleep, am I going to die? If I rest, will I wake back up? Because they will make the association. If you're saying that death is associated with sleeping, they become frightened.
Exactly. You don't want to go to sleep.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So there were things that, it's like, oh my gosh, you never think about it that way. But you oftentimes hear people say, oh, they're just resting, or they're sleeping. And you're not thinking, you're trying to explain to a child, but then that takes a child to a whole different place that you don't want to take them to.
Yeah, it does. And then the more questions will come and you're like, okay, well, how do I answer this? Because one thing about kids, they're very inquisitive. They're going to ask, if you say, okay, go to why am I going to the left? Well, then go to the right. Well, why am I going to the right? Well, put your foot. Well, why am I putting my foot forward? They're going to ask. And honestly, they're asking a lot of questions that we as adults have in our own mind. That we probably are either afraid to ask or don't know how to ask. But kids are very transparent.
They are.
But yeah, I I appreciate that though about them. I really do. It almost kind of makes you it makes you think. And they make you think. They really do.
But it makes so much sense too.
It does. Mm-hmm. It does. Now there are a couple things I wanted to ask you. Now let me ask you this. Mm-hmm. In terms of, how you saying, you just mentioned about the different ways of how to tell them. You may be saying they're resting or something like that. Because, okay, people kind of get stuck. They get stuck on probably saying they're resting as opposed to they passed away or something like that, or they're sleeping. They want to, maybe kind of ease it on into them. But then have you come against individuals who may say, no, I don't think you really should tell them that. I don't think that you should be transparent with these children like this because you're going to scare them or something like that. Mm-hmm. Have you come against any of that, or people not really understanding that this is what you need to do?
I have not come against that, but what the child psychologist recommended is to have conversations with them, not to hide anything, because then as time progresses, they become, they'll resent the fact that you didn't share information with them. But to, again, be very transparent and organic in conversations and just talking through. Again, it's very important of what they conceptually understand about loss and death and grief. So in all of the research that we've done, it all moves to the fact that you should have conversations, that you should not withhold information, but that you should share it. But being very gentle in how you have those conversations.
Right.
But those are conversations that are okay to have.
Yeah, mm-hmm. It is definitely okay to have, and we have to understand that and know that, mm-hmm. It's okay. Mm-hmm. Again, like I said earlier, it is a part of life.
It is.
Some people don't really know how to deal with life, mm-hmm. but then that's why we have these conversations, and that's why we have books written, to help us to get through it. So this is, I'm glad that, even looking here on the comments now, people are really appreciating what you have done, and obviously this call to do this. Because I definitely see great things with this. I really do.
Thank you.
You sound like you're surprised too when you get, like you said, the funeral homes or whatever, and contacting you, like, oh, I didn't think about it like that. But yeah, that is something I believe that could definitely help. Mm-hmm. It could help, at the funeral home, help them to facilitate better, and helping that family to lay their loved one to rest there as well.
Yes.
There's a comment here that says, I heard a child tell his parent to wake his sister up and tell Jesus, I want so-and-so to come back home. When she told him she's sleeping with Jesus. Yeah. So I guess the mom told the son that the sister was sleeping with Jesus, and he said, tell him to come back. Mm-hmm. And that reminds me, I remember when somebody else maybe on Facebook probably remembers this, when John Ritter passed. I think I had the name right. Three's Company.
Yes.
When he passed, and his wife at the time, they had a young child, and she was so close to her dad. And I don't know if anybody remembers this or not, but I remember when they did a news report, and they were interviewing, his late wife now. And so she was talking about her child and how she was dealing with it. And she said, one day the child jumped up on the bed and she said, God, drop him. Drop him down, drop my dad down now. Mm-hmm. Well, at least she understood that, he was no longer there, instead of, wake him up or anything like that. But it again, their concept,
Exactly.
and then they only go so far in their thoughts and their
Exactly.
thinking.
Yep.
We
And that's that whole sleeping piece again is what the child psychologists should stay away from, and it aligns it with the question there to say wake him. Well, can you wake him up?
Right.
Tell him to get up,
Right.
because if they're thinking that they are just sleeping,
Yes.
in our minds, when I lay down to go to sleep, I do wake up.
Yes.
So if they're sleeping, when are they going to get up?
When are they going to get up? Or again, is this going to happen to me?
Exactly.
So yeah, this is great.
Mhm.
Okay, I think we have our spoken word ready to play at this time. I'm looking at my producer. So we're going to have the spoken word played right now, so everyone can take a listen to this. And when we come back, I want us to kind of maybe chit chat until we end about the other aspects. Because you were mentioning it's not only dealing with death, but other ways of dealing with maybe trauma in your life.
Yes,
So I kind of want to talk
loss and
about
grief.
that
Sure.
in the last half hour that we have. So take a listen.
Come here, baby girl. Daddy has to tell you something. You know how we had to take mommy to the doctor because she wasn't feeling well? Well, the doctor told me that mommy couldn't be fixed, but she had to go away. She had to go away because there was nothing they could do for her here. And you remember when we taught you about God in heaven and how we all wanted to go there? Well, mommy is there right now because God is the only one who can do anything for her. And this is her time. Now I know you're sad and you're crying, but that's okay because daddy is crying too. But you see, mommy doesn't hurt anymore, and she is in a place called paradise, and we will miss her, but we're going to see her again one day. See, she had to go and get things ready for us. Huh? Yes, baby girl. She is dead, but I like calling it a transition better. Transition? Well, that word means she moved from one place to another. And so we won't be alone because there are so many people who love us, who will be here with us. But most of all, we have God's grace and mercy. And I can just see mommy sitting around the throne happy and telling God all about us, looking through heaven's window. And then I can just hear God speaking to us, telling us it's going to be okay. I'm going to take good care of her. I got her, and I got you. And so, baby girl, we're going to be happy, and we're going to thank the Lord for the time that we had mommy in our lives, for the time she would braid your hair, for the time that she would dress you in those pretty dresses, for those times when she would let you help her to cook those cookies. We're going to thank God for those times. And I want you to remember this, baby girl. Mommy did not say goodbye. This is not goodbye forever. It's simply a transition.
All right. Thank you, Elder Kevin McGee, for that spoken word on today. Elder McGee has a show here on Saturdays at 12 o'clock noon Central Standard Time entitled Connections. And again, as we stated before, he normally provides us with a spoken word that relates to our topic of the day. So I enjoyed that. That was pretty good. And do you have any thoughts on that particular spoken word?
No, I think it was beautiful how he talked through with his baby girl,
Right.
the things obviously that her mom had done that were good memories for her, but then also that it was a transition that she is, it's, and again, that's conceptually what children think, as if you go back to when the children said, they've been sending Taylor's letters to the hospital.
Right.
Conceptually, the transition now is that she's no longer in the hospital, but she's in heaven. So since we were sending her letters to heaven, to the hospital now, can we send them to her new location, which is in heaven?
Right.
So to hear him talk about the transition, I think it was beautiful.
Great. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Glad you enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this was, it was good. A good breakdown. I did like the way he did the conversation type on there.
Mm-hmm.
So So yeah, let's see. I like I said, I wanted to talk to you about the other aspects because you um, were making sure that we were aware that it not only your book and your series not only deals with death, but it also deals with other trauma,
Mm-hmm.
loss, sadness, as you stated, even divorce.
Yes.
I'll even say this: my parents were divorced when I was young,
Mm-hmm.
and that was, although I think what they tried to do was, my dad, of course, made sure, he came and spent his time with us.
Mm-hmm.
He had the weekends, we
Yes.
were with mom during the week. And then so that helped us to deal with that. He's not in the house any longer,
Mm-hmm.
but he still loves us and he's still, there for
Mm-hmm.
us. So that helped us to get through and deal with things. And I'll also say this, and I've said this before on my show a number of times, that now my mom passed in 1999. My dad ended up passing in 2013.
Okay.
So, oh my goodness, it has
It's
been that long.
14 years ago.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, 2016. My uncle passed in 2013. Oh, getting all mixed up.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, she left the earth first. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
now, and I had a realization when I was actually at her funeral. The realization was, even though they were divorced, for years and years and years, my mother never ran my father down
Mm-hmm.
to us. She never
Mm-hmm.
talked negative
Mm-hmm.
about him in front of us or to us or tried to turn us against him.
Yes.
And when she passed away, that's when it hit me. I said, "Oh my God, she used so much wisdom because look who
Yep.
left the earth first."
Mm-hmm.
Now, if she had done all of that, and we would have had to try and resolve, things
Exactly.
with my dad. My dad needed
Yes.
us in his latter
Yes.
years. So I appreciated that, but that was something to go through,
Yes.
as a child, your
Yes.
parents being divorced. So talk to us about, what you want to accomplish with these the other aspects of this series.
Mm-hmm. With the other aspects, just as it is with the Where's Taylor for the preschool piece, it really is helping children to navigate that space of loss, grief, death, sadness. And again, it's not to pick one versus the other because the coping skills really align with all of them. And it is to recognize again, where children, whatever that age is, from preschool all the way on through college, where they are conceptually, how they're dealing with things, acknowledging where they are by saying it is okay to have those feelings. If it is a child who is suffering from, again, the divorce, if it's movement from, one school to another school, it is still to acknowledge that child's feelings first, and let them know that it is okay to feel that. If you're upset about we had to move homes and therefore you're moving from one school and one set of friends to another, it is still to acknowledge that child's feelings because those are real to them.
Yes.
And to dismiss them does them a disservice. But they're still dealing with it, and so acknowledging it conceptually, where are they with their thoughts about whatever that loss is, talking through it, and that is a dialogue, a conversation, and there are no right answers or wrong answers to what they're feeling. It's what they feel, but then to talk about and acknowledging how do we transition now from where we were to where we are. And so even if it is the divorce and you talk about something that's so important, because perhaps that divorce for mom and dad may not have been good, but there were still good thoughts that children had about either parent.
Exactly.
And to entrench in their thoughts something that's not positive doesn't help them to reconcile, because then you've taken away any good thoughts that they may have had, which helps them to transition. That's part of the coping skill. So if I can't land in a good place, then I'm now at a point of non reconciliation, which becomes detrimental to my growth. It becomes detrimental to how I transition. And that transition doesn't become a very positive one, but one that's very negative, which will have impacts, as the young lady talked about, how it then shows up and appears in my adult life. How do I deal with it now as an adult? Because it wasn't reconciled in a very positive fashion as a child. So, you know, movement from one house to another. What are the good memories that we have about the home? What are the good memories about the school we left? So it isn't, yes, I know that you're sad. I know that you're frustrated and angry that we had to move, but who were some of your friends? What do you remember about your friends? What are some of the great memories you have about the school? Some of the activities that you did with your teachers? So you're still wanting, to transition what potentially could be something very negative and redirect it to a very positive space.
I love that. I
Okay.
absolutely love it. Because they face things on a regular.
They do. They do.
I mean, we all do. I mean, we're humans. We face change. One thing I've always said that, and we as humans, we don't always adapt well to change.
We don't.
We don't.
Most of us don't.
We don't.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we may ease into it after a while,
Mm-hmm.
but when you immediately, I mean, and that's just human nature. It's
is.
just human nature.
It
So,
is.
learning how to deal with it is very vital. It's very important. And I love how you say, you would maybe talk to a child about, try to bring up those memories. And you put it very, very well about how, with even me dealing with my parents' divorce. So if my mother hadn't, and actually both parents hadn't have treated each other civilly, whatever
Yes.
they had differences they had between themselves,
Exactly.
that even led to the divorce, I didn't have to know about it, and I didn't know about it. So then that helped to facilitate me to go through that transition.
Yes.
As a child, and my siblings as well. So this is just so on point. I'm just so enjoying this on today. Okay, I have a couple of comments and questions here on Facebook Live.
Sure.
I'm such a psych nerd. I mean, I just get so analyze some of everything. Okay. Demetria Brand Triplet says here, when talking to people who may not be Christians, how do you address the afterlife? That's an excellent question.
It is. And someone, I can't remember, it might have been Perry on WVON, because I referenced in the book that Taylor was in heaven. And so obviously that's my belief. But whoever's telling the story, whatever your belief is, or however you are having that conversation with that particular child, it's important for you to put in that space, if it's not heaven, wherever that transitional space is, still leaving that child in a very positive place. But whatever it is, and it doesn't have to be heaven. For me, it's heaven because that's my relationship.
Right.
But whatever your thoughts and or beliefs may be, and how you transition from here on earth, if it's Catholic, if you're Catholic, if it's purgatory, if it's, whatever that space is, that's where they've transitioned to. So I'm not making it about, Christianity. That's my alignment because
that's your belief.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I would just welcome anyone who's having that conversation, again, whatever their religious belief is, to be able to talk where that transition may be. And I would hate for people to lose the big picture, getting caught up on if it's heaven for them or not, because the more important piece is talking about how children can cope with whatever that loss is to the next steps. And so I don't want to trip over it being from a religious perspective, heaven versus somewhere else, but it really is that they're transitioning from here to wherever, but that you still have great memories of that person, that loved one, that thing, the dog who passed away, or, it still is, how do I cope with that loss? And it doesn't have to be about where they are, but how we move past. And that's why that third book is beyond. It's beyond, Taylor, the beyondness of remembering that thing, that loved one, that place with a very special place, so that we're able to move on with good memories of whatever the loss is about.
Exactly. Well put. Well put. Mel, I think I've stolen a sister. I steal people all the time. Let's see. Comment here. Buddy Gill says, I want to say that he says, I thank God that he qualified you, Michelle Newell, to go through that ordeal. And now you're able to help others. And you may never know how far your story may go in helping others. God bless you. Oh, sorry. Buddy Gill, you got us crying over here. Oh, my goodness. Yes.
Thank you.
I totally agree with that. Demetria says, amen to that. I agree. I agree.
Wow.
Sometimes we go through things. Sometimes we don't really understand why
Mm-hmm.
we're going through something, but all things work together. Whether we want that's my favorite scripture, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
All things work together for good, but God has a plan.
He does.
He has a master plan.
Yes.
We may have to find our way into it or see where we are in that plan, but he has a master plan, and to understand and know that he's in control. He's definitely in control. Buddy, thank you so much for that comment.
Thank
It
you,
was
buddy.
heartfelt. I'm taking it, and you're talking to her, and I'm sitting up here crying too. But this is great. Do you want to say anything to that? No.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
She's thanking you, buddy. Oh, I want to give her a hug now. I'm going to give her a big hug when we get off the show. But yeah, this is again something very needful, something that is definitely going to impact a lot of lives. Okay, now he's going to make you laugh. He says she's a big old crybaby. Are you talking about me or her? Because I know I'm a crybaby. But yeah, I mean, when it touches you, it's just sensitive enough, and I
think what resonated with me, what he said, is that God qualifying me to be able to tell the story.
Yes.
So that landed. It did. So
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. I guess I'm gonna have to bring tissue next time. I don't know. That was beautifully stated, buddy. Very beautifully stated, and I know God's hand is in this for sure.
It's just an amazing way to endure the life of a little amazing, person, and that she was. I remember Taylor was not a by any means a spectator of life. Even at 4, she was an active participant. And yes, oh gosh, yes. And we traveled. Melanie and our family just really believed in exposing, all of our nieces and nephews. And Taylor probably traveled at age 4 more places than the average person had traveled.
Wow.
But just really, and even in her illness, Annette, that she taught. I know my takeaway from her little life was to never complain, because even in her hospital stints, at some point when she was going through the bone marrow transplant, she was in isolation on the bone marrow transplant floor. And that's why when the producer asked about her death, she had been in isolation in the bone marrow transplant ward. And so she couldn't go out to the playroom. And her only request ever was, can I go to the playroom? Mm-hmm. And so what we did, we transitioned her hospital room to the playroom. And when I tell you, we bought so many toys and Legos, and we have pictures of her on the floor in the hospital room with her and Mel putting together puzzles, or my nieces and nephews and my other sisters and my mom playing with her. And so she was very content in that space and never complained. Never. And so as an adult, it really for me was, no matter what is happening, just don't complain. Even when you look at life's situations, sometimes you can go through something and you can look to the right and you see that people are doing so well. And you're probably saying, well, why am I doing? But all you have to do is look to the left. And you see some people who would love to just walk in your shoes and to be in your situation. And so that's what her life means and has meant to me, is just that whole piece is all I have to do is look to the left. And it puts things in proper perspective for me, that things could be so much worse. Beautiful. And so I thank God for the journey. So, buddy, thank you that he qualified me to tell the story.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. I totally agree.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I can't believe we're at the end of a session today, but this has been tremendous, and I again thank you, and I appreciate you taking the time. I'm glad we finally made the connection.
I am too, and thank you for having me. I'm glad that we persisted and that we took the time to really be able to share some light on, again, a very sensitive yet needed topic that people really don't necessarily talk about. And so my prayer in this is that people will begin to have those conversations, and that we'll begin to talk to children about, those things that they deal with every single day, and help them to be able to cope through what their little lives deal with. So no, thank you.
Okay. Well,
Thank you.
again, thank you for being obedient to the Lord and penning this. This is wonderful, wonderful. Anthony, I see you on Danger McFadden. Thanks for watching. You guys may have to go ahead and rewind because we're ending right now, but I do appreciate you. I thank you all for watching on YouTube, listening on the station's website, IntellectualRadio.com, and also, of course, coming here to the live feed on my personal page. So there are two videos on the Facebook live feed. So you may have to go back to the first one to kind of listen to everything. Oh my goodness. Okay, there's a question here, and I'm going to end this. Demetra says this needs to continue to be addressed. Can we do her series? She said, please. Okay, we're going to have you back.
Sure.
If that's okay.
That is perfectly fine.
Demetra is my assistant, and whatever she says goes. No, seriously. That's a great question, Demetra, because I definitely want to, because I wrote down the names of the series and the different stages that they will be applied to.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm grateful that you're even moving in that vein, and I pray Godspeed over you and your project, and that He will definitely be glorified in everything go to say and do. If you're on the Facebook live feed, go ahead and scroll on up so you can find out where to get her book. Where's Taylor will be out December 31st, correct?
That is
and
correct.
You can go to Amazon. You can do pre-orders now.
Yes.
Go to where'staylor.com.
Yes.
Okay. Where, just like the word where's, WHERESTAYLOR.
Yep.
I'm getting a little brain freeze right here now. But go ahead to the website, do your pre-orders. Make sure you guys keep up with Michelle. She's going places. I'm telling you. She's going. She's already been places. She's been on Windy City Live. How did I get her on Mind, Body, and Soul? I don't know. That's the Lord. That's the Lord. And this is great stuff. Yeah. So we're going to definitely get her series together. Have her come back. We'll plan all that out. And again, just thank you.
Thank you.
I just thank you so much.
Thank you
for your time. She's so beautiful too. I
Thank
must say, as I'm exiting off of Mind, Body, and Soul, I was looking at some of your pics of the 28th. I must have those boots. I just want you to know that, okay? I just so you'll know. Okay.
Gotcha.
All right. You've been listening to Mind, Body, and Soul with Annette. We're here on Intellectual Radio. Make sure you guys come back next week for another session. And until next time, I want you to get caught up with Annette.
You've just been listening to Mind, Body, and Soul with Annette, where your host, Annette Harris, provided you with psychological and biblical insight for your everyday concerns. Need more insight? Visit Annette's Facebook page at Mind, Body, and Soul with Annette. Don't forget, tune in next week for Mind, Body, and Soul with Annette.